look at this, Matt Green, and you look at the depth chart, what stands out to you? Is there a position group that you feel best about? Is there a certain player or two that stand out to you? Is there something like, man, that seeing it on paper actually a little bit concerns me more than I had anticipated, or I'm more excited about it than I had anticipated just looking at it?
Honestly, I think if you just go position by position group, it's like you can't really be worried about anything other than quarterback. It's like I don't think Georgia has a Kenny McIntosh on the roster in 2023. Like, I think Kenny McIntosh is like a truly like dynamic kind of special. I think he can be a good NFL running back. Kendall Milton's is solid. I don't think he's as good as Zamir White, and I'm not so sure Zamir White's ever going to be like a featured NFL running back. You know, he's just a solid college player. So I don't know that like Dejon Edwards just seems very solid. Branson Robinson of that group, it seems like the only one that potentially has like a star potential. But I mean, having a backfield of all of those guys, you can't be worried about Georgia's running game. It's a bunch of really solid backs, and you have like three. And Andrew Paul was like creating a buzz in the offseason last year when he came in at the same time as Branson Robinson, and I believe he tore his ACL, and so he missed all of last year. And all I'm going to say he's number 3. So he may have been like a 3-star recruit or like a low 4-star, but you're giving a guy a single digit, that's got to mean something. Okay, numbers aren't everything, but I am a believer that, you know, to get number 3 as a true freshman, he could be something special. It's very unscientific opinion there, but so Georgia at running back, it's not like special, but I feel like it's not a position you're going to worry about. Offensive line, Devin Willock obviously was a guy who played a lot. Rest in peace. You know, he's a guy who played like basically starter minutes, but Ratledge and Xavier Truss were the starters at guard. You got both of them back. Cedric Van Pran back for his senior year, or Van Pran Granger, I should say. And then like Amarius Mims, like with Warren McClendon missing a few games at the end of the season, Amarius Mims basically played starter minutes for the final like 3-4 games of the season. So he's almost, we all know what he was, a 5-star prospect. Like you know exactly what you're getting. So he's almost a returning starter from that perspective. So it's like Georgia's like basically returning 4 starters on the offensive line, like from what was probably the best offensive line in college football a year ago, even though they didn't win the I'm blanking on the award, Joe Moore Award. And then you just look at the defense, like the both middle linebackers are back. Like I think Smile Mondon and I feel like Dumas Johnson gets a lot of the hype. He was kind of like the leader of the defense, but Smile Mondon, it feels like maybe a Nakobe Dean Quay Walker situation where he's kind of the leader, the better college player, but Smile Mondon is like the more freak athlete that's going to get drafted higher. Like those, and both of those guys are back as juniors this upcoming year. So I think the biggest question is pass rush. So Georgia didn't have much of a pass rush last year, but you have 3 5-star edge guys, Marvin Jones Jr. as a true sophomore, and then the 2 they're bringing in, who's Mpimba and who's the other one? I'm blanking on the other 5-star edge rusher from Florida, Venice, Florida. You know what I'm talking about?
No,
he picked
Pimba's
Georgia
from
on
Florida too,
day.
isn't he?
He's Pimba's an IMG guy. I need to pull up the Georgia's recruiting class, but yeah, brought in the other 5, and I think he was the higher rated one. The one I'm blanking on his name. He was top 10.
Gabriel
top 15.
Harris.
And Gabriel Harris is another one, but he was the
Damon
lower
Wilson?
ranked. Damon Wilson, there you go.
Yeah.
He was the 5-star. So they brought in 2 5-star edge rushers and Gabe Harris, and you're already hearing some buzz. There was like 18 early enrollees on this team. Like I've already heard some buzz about this linebacker class they got coming in. That's true freshmen. So like the linebackers are absolutely loaded. And Michael Williams is on the defensive line. Like everyone is back on the defensive line other than Jalen Carter, who's obviously the best player on the defensive line, could go number 1 in the draft. Did you hear that story from, is it Jordan Yates? Was that the Georgia Tech quarterback a year ago? Have you heard this story?
I think I sent you the video of him. Are you talking about the video of him preparing for Georgia and actually playing?
You sent me the video,
Yeah.
yeah. So Jalen Carter, he's obviously going to be missed. Just an absolute one of a kind on the defensive line. But Yeah, and you're losing Chris Smith and Keely Ringo in the secondary. I think that's probably the biggest question mark, I would say. But I think Malachi Starks, like I've said, he's a future star, and Javon Bullard. I mean, in the college football playoff, he was probably Georgia's maybe best defensive player, period, in the playoffs. So it's hard to be worried about anything. Like, I don't even think I mentioned Georgia's receivers, and Brock Bowers obviously being maybe the best player in college football. Like, the receivers, A.D. Mitchell is a big loss. Like, I just hate losing A.D. Mitchell. I think he's the best receiver on this team. But you just look at the guys Georgia has coming back with McConkey, Marcus Rosemy-Jack-Saint, and Arian Smith. And then bringing in Dominic Lovett and Ra Thomas, it's like you can't really be worried about Georgia's receivers by any means. Like Ra Thomas, I know he got in whatever, off the field stuff, but as far as I've heard, he's still with the team. So I don't know exactly what's happening in that situation. But assuming he is on the team, like those could potentially be Georgia's two best receivers. But I mean, Ladd McConkey, don't sell Ladd McConkey short now. He just go look at those numbers. Ladd McConkey's a player. He's a dynamic athlete. So I think if you just look across the board, quarterback is really the only position that's like, I mean, you don't know exactly what you're getting, but Carson Beck, I think, who would you say? I'm thinking Carson Beck it doesn't feel like that much of a three-way competition to me. It feels like Carson Beck is the lead guy, in my opinion.
I think it's Carson Beck, but it's also, I think you kind of have to. It's like y'all are kind of in the same spot that Tennessee's in with Joe Milton, or it's the guy who waited, that you kind of have to follow through on that loyalty. You have to at least give him the opportunity to lose the job and be like, hey, he has to start, he has to go in, and like we have to give him every opportunity to lead this team because, hey, he was an important depth piece if things went awry with Stetson or Hendon Hooker. Like, he could have transferred in this era and he did not. So Carson Beck staying for as long as he did, this will be 4 years of him being in the program without a start until
I think
fall?
I saw some stat that in the last 3 or 4 recruiting classes, there's been something like 45, 50 4-star quarterbacks, and that have been he's the only one that's been a 4-star quarterback that has been at a place for 3 years without starting that didn't transfer.
Yeah.
Like in all of college football in the last 3 or 4 years. So I think there's a reason. This is where I think where Georgia could miss Todd Monken the most is you just know how good Todd Monken is and what he's done to Georgia's offense, and the player that Stetson Bennett was when he arrived versus what he was when he left. I would love for Todd Monken to be making this decision on these 3 quarterbacks. And it's not to say it's not going to be a legitimate 3-way competition. I think it is. I just think I just feel confident that Carson Beck really is going to be ready. I mean, you just saw him in limited action, but I mean, Georgia's backup probably got more snaps than any other team's backup last season. But he's not a statue. He's a pocket passer for sure, but he's got some athleticism. So I don't know. I'm confident that Carson Beck is going to be that guy, but obviously Stockton and Vandegrift are going to have shots to win it. There's definitely not an incumbent by any means.
No, and I think it is weird though, because it seems like Beck was Monken's guy. Like that was just the big, he seems like more of the air raid type, right? Like who Monken would prefer, the big arm, tall, just I can throw it anywhere down the field. We're going to attack more. Like he was going to be much more of a interesting air raid toy for Monken to really put out his vision over the next couple of years.
That could be, but I think any good offensive coordinator is going to take what their quarterback can do and design the best thing for him. It's like Dan Mullen. You saw what Dan Mullen wanted in all of his offenses at Mississippi State with a runner like Fitzgerald or Dak Prescott or something. But maybe the best offense he ever had is with a pocket passer like Kyle Trask. So it's like I feel like a great OC can get whatever he needs to, and Beck's got a bunch of talent. It's not to say that Bobo can't make this decision or anything. If Bobo doesn't have experience of choosing quarterbacks or evaluating quarterbacks or anything like that. But he did start Joe Tereshinski over Matthew Stafford to start a season. So, who knows? Who knows? And Joe Cox even got a start there after the comeback win over Colorado. I don't know if you remember. That was
I don't.
Big time. Stafford was in. The offense wasn't doing anything. Down 13-0, I think, in the fourth quarter. 2006, Joe Cox comes in, throws 2 touchdowns. I want to say they were both to Martrez Milner. The last one was like, I don't know, less than a minute left or something, and it was a big time. I think they won like 14-13 or something. But then Joe Cox got the next start. I want to say that was Ole Miss. And then Stafford beat him out, and Stafford was the guy. No, actually, no. Tereshinski was hurt. That's why Stafford and Cox didn't play that well. So that Tennessee game, I don't know if you remember, prime time 2006. I was working at the Derby at the time. That's why I remember that, watching this game. Georgia took a punt and a kick to the house in that game, but Tennessee hung 50 on Georgia. I want to say it was like 51, like 35 or something like that. And then that's the game where Tereshinski ultimately was benched, and then it was Stafford from then on out. But I don't know why I got on that huge tangent on Georgia's 2006 quarterback competition, but that's Mike Bobo. He was a part of that. So let's bring it all back. Mike Bobo, he's obviously had some quarterback decisions to make. Also, it's like me and my brother were talking about this the other day. Like, if you really think about it, like Aaron Murray's the all-time leader in passing in SEC history. Like, that's a guy under Mike Bobo. While that is a 5-star quote-unquote prospect, like Aaron Murray's a guy who never even almost played in the NFL. You know what I mean? Like, he was maybe a 3rd-round pick, 4th-round pick. Like, I want to say McCarron, he was around the